Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's edition of the Sport Management Club at IUPUI's virtual speaker series. Yesterday, we featured the president of Indiana Sports Corporation, Ryan Vaughn. Today, we are featuring the Senior Director of Marketing Communications, Sarah Myer. Sarah comes to us, and we love working with Sarah, so we're happy to have her here today, and we're thrilled. Sarah, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Yeah, very excited to be here. Love IUPUI and have loved working with your students. And it's a great time to be a part of Indy. So excited to be here.
So, Sarah, dive in and tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background, and just who is Sarah Myer?
Yeah, what a loaded question. I am originally from Cleveland, Ohio. So I was interested in majoring in music or journalism. So my guidance counselor told me about Butler in Indianapolis. Had never heard of it. This was before their basketball days. So I was very new to Butler, to Indianapolis, but checked it out and came here for school and then ended up staying here. So now I've actually been in Indy longer than I lived in Cleveland, which is very weird to say out loud, but was a journalism major with a concentration in public relations. And through a lot of my internships, I got really interested in marketing and promotions. So I loved events, and I wanted to learn more about how I informed people more about getting involved in events and getting out and doing things. So when I graduated, while I was at school, I interned with the Pacers, with the Indians, and with a radio station. And then when I graduated, I started working for Nuvo News Weekly, which was a weekly newspaper here that basically told you what to do and where to go in Indianapolis as far as local businesses and restaurants and concerts and all of those great things. So I was always involved in trying to find out what you could do in Indy and how you could really get involved in the city. Fast forward 5 years after that, I was very much volunteering for a lot of nonprofits around the city, including the Symphony. So I started working there as their director of marketing and ended up being their VP of marketing. And they do over 200 concerts a year. So I was promoting a lot of events, and it was very fast paced, and I really liked working in that environment. And in the meantime, got very connected in the community and met a lot of great people. I know you guys had Melissa Thompson on earlier, and I met her through a leadership series that I did. And she knew I was looking to serve my city more. I loved Indianapolis, but I wasn't really getting that fulfillment from the job that I was in. And the job came open at Sports Corp, and she immediately called me and said, "Hey, you should definitely consider applying for this job." And I got it, which was great. And I think what I love is I was a little nervous because I am a huge sports fan, but going from music to sports, I didn't know what people would think or if they would trust that I knew what I was doing. But I loved that Ryan, our president, he actually was in a meeting with me and someone said, "Oh, so you're going from music to sports." And Ryan said, "She's going from music to community. We are not a sports organization. We are a community organization that uses the platform of sports." And I just loved when he said that, because it was exactly why I was so drawn to Sports Corp. It's just that we serve our community. We use sports to do it, but we serve our community. So I love the mission here. I love what we do. I've absolutely loved getting to know so many of the people that I've been able to meet through this job. And it'll be 2 years in April that I've been here.
So you said that you had done some stuff with group sales, for instance, at the Pacers. How was that experience, and what did that do for you heading into marketing?
Yeah, so group sales, it wasn't like my first choice as an internship, but I knew I wanted to work for an organization like the Pacers. And what it helped me do was learn how to talk to people. It pulled me out of my comfort zone, and it learned how to assess problems and come up with solutions. So I was always working with groups on We were always trying to sell them to come to Pacers games and try to figure out the best solution for their group, whether it was a kids basketball team or it was a networking group. Like, we were always trying to find the best way that the Pacers could fit their needs. And again, took me out of my comfort zone. I had to cold call people and see if they were interested. I was always trying to put together materials that really help sell why you should buy a group ticket package. So really started getting my mind going about, okay, what does the customer want and what could we do to serve that need? And I really loved kind of doing that kind of problem solving, and especially through sports. I mean, that's the fun thing, is sports can solve a lot of those connection problems. So, but again, it took me out of my comfort zone. I worked a ton at the time. I don't know how the Pacers internship program is now, but it was unpaid. So I was doing an unpaid internship there. I was doing classes full time, and I was serving as a waitress because I was paying off my car and trying to do all of that. So, so it was a challenge, but I think it taught me, again, like organization, time management, and also just it opened doors. So even though I never really saw myself staying in group sales, it definitely opened doors for future opportunities.
So all too often we're telling our students that sales can be the conduit to getting in the industry, and nobody ever wants to do sales. Well, you're an example of someone who ended up somewhere in the sport industry or community industry as well. You're in all of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're doing marketing, but you started as an account person. Kind of speak to that a little bit. And do you believe that that is what students should be doing, is kind of going through that sales process to learn that?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. I don't think anyone should shy away from a job where they think, oh, I don't know if I could do that, or I don't know if I'm qualified enough. Honestly, for me, and I've heard this from a lot of people as well, if you have an organization that you want to like, that you want to work for, you're not going to get the job that you ultimately want right off the bat. You're going to have to work for it and prove that you're a hard worker in order to move up the chain. So when I got my first job at Nuvo, like, account coordinator didn't sound like something that was my dream job, but I knew, like, okay, if I can get my foot in the door and show how hard I work, I bet I could move into something that was more my comfort level, more what really gave me energy and drove me. So I think, and what sales teaches you, I mean, it teaches you how to develop and cultivate relationships. It teaches you what it's like to hear no, which I think a lot of people should experience. Like, it is really nerve-wracking to ask someone to advertise or buy tickets or do this, like, to spend money. Really, you're asking people to spend their money. And I think it's good to build your confidence when you ask and you're going to get no's. But when you get that yes, like, that is the ultimate. Like, that is such a huge energy booster. And so I think, like, you really get to know what it's like to develop relationships, to problem solve, like I said. And if you're really good at sales and developing relationships, like, that is key for an organization. And they're going to see that if you work hard at that, you can do other positions in that organization. Like, I just feel like if people are willing to pick up the phone and call someone, or are willing to do that proactive outreach, it says a lot about their character and their work ethic. So I think that's also what sales can show.
You transitioned into Nuvo, and a lot of people, maybe they don't know what Nuvo is. I know a bunch about Nuvo. So how was that transition? You obviously have been around the arts and entertainment district, I guess you could call it, that industry.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned that community and relationship building. So all of these internships that you did, was that what you thought was going to happen? Was it would carry you into this relationship building, I guess, institution, not just ISC, but other places like ISO?
Yeah, not at all. I mean, I didn't see that. I mean, I remember doing my internships. I hadn't even really thought about if I was going to stay in Indianapolis. I just knew that my work ethic needed to be consistent and strong and to my high expectations, so I could keep moving forward. I knew that, like, I wanted to keep progressing, keep learning, and that I think just being a good person, being a hard worker was somehow going to pay off. But when I was that young, I just don't think that I really thought like, oh, in 5 years, I will need this person I'm working with to be a testimonial for my work. And so I never thought like that, but I strongly encourage people to really think about how this relationship could help in the future. I mean, I even tell our interns, like, get to know your fellow intern class, because you don't know which one of those interns is going to get a, awesome job in 2 years, and you're going to want to talk to them. You're going to want to work with them. So like, you never know who you could be working with currently, who could help advance your career in the future. So always, I would say, always treat those relationships like an audition, really. I mean, you are setting yourself up all of the time for your future. So I don't think I thought about that much. Luckily, I wasn't an idiot, so I didn't do too many things that would put me in a poor place for getting jobs later on. But even with the sports corp job, Ryan did not know me. And so, of course, like, the first thing he did was he picked up the phone and called people who he knew had worked with me. And luckily, some of those people I hadn't really worked with in a couple of years, yet they still told Ryan, like, you need to hire her. And so again, like, it's not just the people that you're working with currently, but like anyone in your past that you've worked with, like, keep those relationships going, because you don't know how they're going to help you in the future. And especially right now, like, I mean, you need all the connections you can get right now. As jobs are there, it's hard right now in the events business for sure, but they're going to come back, and those jobs are going to open, and you need to have your connections that will, back you up and say that you're a hard worker.
And don't forget that you could also be the bad references as well. Absolutely. So be aware of that. So you just kind of transitioned me perfectly.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
You're in that industry of connection making, and right now is a difficult time for students. They're at a crossroads, I guess you could say, of how do I meet people? How do I get out of the house? How do I, are people going to be willing to meet with me for coffee or what, things like that? How do they network now? How would you suggest that they try to get themselves out there, put themselves out with so few opportunities to volunteer and get themselves in front of you to see your habits? What kind of advice would you provide there?
Yeah, I would honestly, I've been really impressed with some of the students that have reached out to me through LinkedIn, just asking for coffee. And even, I would even say, like, when you reach out to people, a lot of people are very busy right now. It is a crazy time managing through the pandemic, and it's just a lot of energy that's being put towards work. But I love when people reach out and say, I just would like 15 minutes. Like, that says to me too, I'm like, okay, I can do 15 minutes. Like, I can give that time. And just say, and it helps for you to have specific questions to them too. Like, I usually will connect with a student no matter what, but it really helps if they say, I am really interested in X, Y, and Z, and could we talk about it for 15 minutes? And also be flexible, because like, the person that you're probably reaching out to does not have a very flexible schedule. So try to be as flexible as possible. But I've been really impressed by that. I've connected with a lot of students actually through LinkedIn and over Zoom, and just talking to them and getting to know where they're at and where they want to be and who they're supposed to connect with. And in Indianapolis, it's very unique. And that's because people are willing to do those kinds of things. I've heard in other cities that is not the case. And in Indy, I think we've all gotten somewhere because someone, helped us get our foot in the door, or someone, was able to make that connection for us. So I think we all kind of have this feeling of knowing, like, we have to pay it forward. And so I think in this city, there's a lot of people who want to get connected and help those connections happen. So I would say, don't be afraid to reach out, because right now, like, that's that's really the only option. Without these networking events and a lot of the events that you can volunteer at, you're not getting that face-to-face time with a lot of these people. So find the people in the industries that you want to connect with, and just reach out. The worst they could say is no. That's one of the things I love about this series. When I saw that you guys had started this series, I am telling you, you are giving a list of people who they won't mind if you reach out on LinkedIn and say, hey, do you have just 15 minutes to talk? So I think that's fantastic. And just keep educating yourself on what's going on. Keep trying to find as many resources as possible. There's a lot of webinars. There's great organizations that are putting really awesome content out there. Try to be as involved as possible. I can send a couple of links to, I'm very involved with Indie Hub, which is a nonprofit here that connects 20 and 30 somethings to the city. They have a city ambassador program where you just fill out a survey of what you're interested in, and they will connect you with someone who has been here for a while, who has connections, that will immediately set up a coffee with you and talk about how you want to get involved and what you're looking to do. I mean, there are resources out there that can help in a virtual world.
You just so totally stole my next question. It was about Indie Hub, but
I mean, I can talk about Indie Hub all day, but
well, why don't you explain more about, I mean, it is about connecting 20s and 30 somethings, but it's not confined to just that. It's more of a city resource. Explain a little bit more.
Yeah, so Indie Hub started 15 years ago, and I probably started getting involved about 12 years ago, but it was when I was like starting to really establish myself in Indie. I'm putting the link in the chat. And originally they really were about kind of getting you introduced to other people in Indie. So it was a lot of like happy hours and like stuff after work. But then they realized like people really, it's more than just a happy hour. Like they really want to figure out how they can get connected to their city. And I think it's something like when someone moves here, they will make the decision if they want to leave in the next 2 years in the first 90 days. So like it's, you're not going to commit to a city unless you start to have that connection. And that's what Indie Hub works on. So they provide volunteer opportunities. They share lots of information about organizations to get connected with. They do events that actually make the connection happen. So the city ambassador program I talked about, they have book clubs that they have, which is great. I mean, talk about a way to connect with people. The book clubs are usually 20 to 25 people who participate, and it's usually 4 to 6 weeks. They don't pick any books that are too heavy or intimidating or long, but they pick something that they can really digest and have leaders take you through that. But it's a great organization. I especially recommend it to college students and those who are just graduating, because they really have some great virtual content, again, connecting you to people in the city. And once they do start having more in-person events, it's amazing the people that you can meet through those and the connections that you make. I've seen a lot of benefits from it. There's been a lot of people who I work with at Sports Corp that I originally met through Indie Hub. A lot of our staff is involved with Indie Hub programming. So it's a great way to figure out how you can give back to Indie and also at the same time connect with other people who have similar interests as you.
And Sarah's not just involved with Indie Hub, she's involved with multiple of these things around the city, and she's extremely engaged with what's happening around the city. And so this one right here is one you want to connect with. So I'm just going to throw this at you, attendees. If you have a question of any kind, don't hesitate to drop it in the Q&A or on the YouTube chat. We will answer them all. But I wanted to move a little bit away from that and more into what's happening now in the city. We've got the whole entire NCAA tournament is coming to our city. And Indiana Sports Corporation is probably the, I guess, train, I don't know, the engine that is pulling it along. And you're part of some really fun initiatives right now. Let's start with the fan jam, and it's going around town. First off, explain what that is. How can people
Mm.
get involved with it, and how can they get it to come to wherever they may be, whether it be their school, whether it be something else? Kind of explain that.
Yeah, so the Fan Jam was a grassroots marketing promotion that started in Minneapolis when Minneapolis hosted the Final Four. And it is basically a promotional truck that is filled with a full-size basketball court that you can set up, basketball hoops. They have like beanbag chairs if you want to just hang out, and like just a huge setup so they could take it to events and basically have an entire Final Four promotional area. And the idea was to take it throughout the state from the day that the last Final Four ended until Minneapolis started, and really engage the community in all that you could do around the Final Four. So the NCAA does a fantastic job of coming up with all kinds of ways to engage either before the Final Four or around it during that weekend. And so that was the truck that really promoted it throughout the state. And so the next city was Atlanta. So Atlanta did the same thing. They rebranded the truck all Atlanta. They rebranded all the courts and the tents and everything. And then, so we had plans to pick it up from Atlanta as soon as Atlanta was done. And then COVID hit. So we ended up picking it up in August, and were able to start activating it in October. So mid-October was when we started really putting it out into the community. And luckily, I had an all-star intern over the summer, Wally. So Wally, I need to just I have a special place in my heart for Wally, because during Big Ten women's tournament, which was a very stressful time for us, I remember seeing him and I said, hey, I've seen you volunteer for a lot of our events, and I feel like you need to work with me at some point. And then about a month or so later, in the middle of COVID, we're all working from home. Wally reaches out to me and says, I need an internship to graduate. And I said, great, you're going to be my intern. And then, of course, he did so well over the summer. I was like, now I have to get you to work here. So he is our promotions and marketing coordinator and has coordinated all of the engagements with the Fan Jam. And I will say that the Fan Jam was super important this year, probably more important than ever to the NCAA, because it was literally the only way that the Final Four was out in the community. So for Wally to be able to take that on was a huge help to all of us, because we knew we had to be out there somehow, even though, obviously events aren't really happening. It's not really a great idea to congregate a bunch of people in one place, but how could we do that safely and still have an impact? So we've done everything from drive-throughs on Monument Circle to dropping off items at schools to food drives where people drive through and those in need will get boxes of food and then get greeted by the Fan Jam with a bunch of Final Four promo items. So he's done over 30 engagements. He's, I think, engaged with over 17,000 people through the Fan Jam. And we were given 2020 March Madness items that obviously did not get used for the tournament. And the NCAA said, is there any way that you can recycle these, get them back to the community? So they've given out over 6,000 of those items back to the community. So done all of this engagement through a pandemic. And I think it's just been really great to see. He's also been able to engage 108 students to volunteer. And I'll come to some of these events and the students will be like, I haven't seen you in so long. I mean, it's like the first time some of these students are seeing each other. So it's just a really great opportunity. And again, I think the big picture part of this is we always want to show why Indianapolis sets themselves apart from other cities. And this is another reason why. We were able to figure out how to have community impact through a pandemic with a truck, just with a truck. So I think that says a lot about our team. And they've even been honoring frontline heroes through it. I think Wally went to Market District up in Carmel on Friday. We had someone nominated. He's a chef. He has been working through the entire pandemic. He goes home, he sleeps in a separate bedroom. He has made all these sacrifices, and it's amazing what the team has been able to do to shed a light on some of these heroes and then engage with the community. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer about the fan jam, but I'm very, very.
No, the question that I have though is how can students get engaged with it as we head toward this massive event? And I don't think people understand how massive the undertaking is you guys have, which we'll get into in a moment. So how can they get involved with that?
Yeah, so my recommendation is always to make sure that you have a profile in our volunteer registration system. So I'm putting that in the chat as well. If you log into that system, your information will be there. And then once we have volunteer opportunities open up, you will get an email and a notification that something has opened or it's about to open. I would recommend that number one, because then your information is with us. And I'm telling you, like, and Jeff, I'm sure you understand this, stuff is moving so fast, like things change daily. I mean, we're trying to make sure that we're communicating to even our own staff. Like I'm trying to figure out how to make sure everyone is caught up on everything, because it changes daily. But I know that volunteer opportunities are going to open up for a variety of things. So just get your information in there. And so we have it, and then you will get those updates as soon as we have them. We're really not sure around the games how much there's going to be, just because, I mean, look, we're still operating in a pandemic. They are going to limit the amount of people that they have in venue and around the venues. But that doesn't mean we don't need people to help us do downtown cleanups or help us welcome visitors. And, you know, we're going to have a lot of other things that will need the community step forward for. And I love putting students in those roles, because from my experience, they work hard, they want to, you know, get involved, and just from our events, been super reliable. So I think this is definitely time to get involved. And as things start to get, I mean, even post March Madness, we're going to need volunteers to help us execute a lot of these events. The college football playoff championship game just announced the big, like, one year countdown to when we host, and they're going to need a lot of volunteers. We're really hoping, fingers crossed, like that event could see a normal capacity. So, I mean, we're really trying to rev up for that too. So again, get yourself registered, and that guarantees that you'll hear about these opportunities as soon as they're posted.
So let's shift into the darkness for a moment and go back into time a little bit, and your immediate response to the announcement of the shutdowns. The world stops on March 11th, 2020, right? Your response, your staff's response, what did you guys do? How did you manage that time when basically your livelihood stopped?
Yeah. So we, on March 11th, that early afternoon, we got notified that there was a good chance the Big Ten was going to not have fans at games. So immediately we got the team together. I remember we radioed over to the Bankers Life staff and said, hey, do you have a conference room that's open? We need to we need a staff brainstorm right now. So it was myself, Ryan, Patrick, our chief operating officer, Craig Eust, who's our event director, and Brett Kramer, who's our PR director. So we all move into this room and we just start writing down everyone we need to communicate with. Okay, so if they're not going to let fans happen, who do we absolutely need in the stadium? Who else do we have to notify about, like vendors that we had showing up? Like, who do we have to tell that we have to cancel? All right, let's say ancillary events. If they're not going to let fans in the stadium, we definitely can't have ancillary events telling people to like congregate. Who do we have to notify for that? What have people registered? So we just basically went through like every line of communication possible that we had and who we'd have to contact when, as soon as this news got out, because we knew if it got out and we didn't have a plan yet, I mean, every second counted. So I'm telling you, like whiteboard, just writing everything down. I'm typing everything as fast as I can. So then we go back to like our operations room, and then the news came that they were going to limit fans. So we're sending everything out, getting everything out there. It was probably like 1 o'clock in the morning. I finally went home, but knowing we all went home knowing this could get worse, like this could get bad. So March 12th, we actually had a mental health event in the morning, and I'm just like trying to pay attention to the speaker, but also just watching my phone. Like, when is it going to happen? Because I had this feeling, when is this going to happen? When are they going to cancel? So I remember I was driving back to the office from the mental health event. Ryan calls me. They're canceling the Big Ten tournament, men's tournament. I'm like, okay. So like getting to the office, I'm getting stuff, sending out some emails. And I think at that point, Ryan had said, we need a mental health day tomorrow, because it was like March 13th was the next day. Don't come into the office, everyone take a break, and we're coming back Monday fully refreshed. This was a hard day. And I'm packing up my stuff, and I get the phone alert, the NCAA tournament has been canceled. And I was like, a daze, like in a daze. And the thing was, like, when they canceled the Big Ten men's tournament, I was super disappointed. We had worked so hard on it. We were so excited about it. But I only was thinking about it in like the sense of our events being canceled and, oh, that stinks for the restaurants. Or I did not even stop to think like, oh, they're going to cancel everything. Oh, they're going to shut down it didn't even really cross my mind. It was just like, okay, they're going to do this for a couple of days. And it just sucks that it happens to be the weekend of Big Ten men's tournament. But when that news hit, and then we got the email that Sunday, hey, we're not coming back to the office for 2 weeks. And then it just got drawn out. I mean, it was crazy. And I will say too, I failed to mention during that meeting, while we were meeting about what to do if the Big Ten men's tournament was limiting fans. So we're also having phone calls about moving parts of the NCAA tournament to Indy. So, okay, we got to limit cities for the tournament. So now we're talking about first and second rounds and regionals in Indy. And then everyone goes to the Final Four in Atlanta. So like that's all also having conversations. There were so many conversations had, and then all of a sudden on the 12th, it was like, boom, it's done. Nothing's happening. So it was, yeah, Jeff, I mean, I'm sure you guys experienced that too, but it's just like, you had to have a few days until you realize like, oh my God, like, did that actually I mean, I would wake up several mornings after that thinking, am I dreaming? Like, is everything I worked on is canceled? Like, it's done. Oh, and I have to stay in my house. Like, I can't leave.
I looked at it the same way, but I also looked at it and went, oh, I'm out how much money right now? Because of all the gigs that I was working at the time. I was doing the regional and then the Division II regional at UIndy. And I'm like, oh yeah, I got cash in my pocket. Nope. They had other plans for that. Yeah. Being there on March 11th to see that thing get shut down, I was just like, what do you do? It was a kick in the teeth, you know?
Oh my God. It was crazy. And just, it was funny when the restaurants started opening back up in like May and June, they had product that had Happy St. Patrick's Day on it because they had bought so much product preparing for the Big Ten men's tournament and regionals. Like, they had bought so much. Everything was still branded for March for like weeks that they had to get rid of. So, I mean, it's just the impact. You just don't understand how far that goes in the hotels. And like, when you started hearing about like just the effects that it had on so many people, it's just insane. You just don't think about that stuff.
So, yeah, mine was just the pocketbook, right?
Yeah.
But when you think about all of the things you worked on and how everything got crashed, right? Now you've got something that this kind of has given you an opportunity. We were supposed to host the Final Four, but now it's been changed. It's no longer just 4 teams. It's now 68. And now you've got an opportunity to kind of be creative and do some new things. So what kind of initiatives have you got going forward, A? And B, what are you guys kind of doing to, I guess, make sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be now? I'm not sure how to ask that question.
I know, right? Yeah, so I would say big priorities for us are obviously help the NCAA in any way, wherever the NCAA's priorities are, that's where our priorities are. So making sure that those are aligned as things change and that as things move. So constant communication. But I would say as far as the city goes, kind of around two big priorities, and that is the look and feel of downtown and making sure that it's in a place to welcome people back, to give them a good experience, whether we have fans are just limited to family and friends or we have more fans. Great. We are treating everyone like they are a VIP to our city, because this is a huge part of our comeback and a huge part of how we can move our city forward. So everything from downtown cleanups we're talking about, mural projects so we fill some of the vacant window spaces, some pop-up shops so we can fill some of the like vacant stores. So really, assessing our entire downtown, specifically I would say the Mile Square, where people are staying in their hotels and will likely be walking around a lot. But how do we clean that up, brighten it up, and make it a city that's ready to welcome people like we always have? And obviously recruiting help to do that. So that's where a lot of the recruiting the community volunteers is going to happen. And then really thinking about, okay, who is going to be watching Indianapolis? And it's a lot of people. So there's going to be a lot of media here. And I think that's a hard part, is we don't know what to expect, but I think we just need to plan to expect as many people as possible. And if there's less, great, at least we planned for more. But from my standpoint, I'm thinking, okay, we've got those venues, going to be limited media inside the venues because they're trying to limit people already. So some of those media that are used to get in the venue won't be in the venue. So they'll probably be on the perimeter outside somewhere in the city. But then you've got all those other media of 68 teams who are going to travel to Indy and want to report right from the city where the team is playing. They won't have credentials. They probably will have to set up their own hotel room and everything, but they're going to be in our city and they're going to want to know, where do I get the best shots? Where do I get the best live feed? Where can I get some B-roll? All of that goes into their planning. So we need to deliver on that, because that message that all those media people take back to their cities is going to have a massive effect on us, whether it's getting visitors here, conventions here. We need to get our convention business back, and Visit Indy is working their butts off on it. But we need to make sure that people know that we're a clean, safe city to be in, and that this is why we host events. This is why people trust us to do this. So I would say, Jeff, there is a huge effort being made around getting downtown cleaned up and ready to go. And then also an effort around, okay, how do we let the media ensure a great experience for the media and make sure that they are telling a positive story about Indianapolis.
In addition to that, though, you have a specific initiative that you're doing in conjunction with March Madness that is, I think I'm looking at it, your brilliant marketing and promotions mind has kind of taken advantage of the COVID pandemic a little bit and come up with what I consider an absolutely brilliant initiative. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes. So obviously, like I had said before, we always have to remember that we are operating in a pandemic, and we still need to do our part to get those numbers down, because the fan capacity depends on the numbers. So we need to make sure that we are moving in more negative cases. So it's weird that it's like negative is positive, But when we were talking about this, we knew that if we were going to execute this event, we would have to do it in a safe way. And to help push that safety, we are going to launch mask Madness next week and hand out a lot of these. So really just pushing that we mask up today so they can play. So really trying to push that message of you've got to mask up if you want to see basketball in this city, in this state, in this community. So we'll be distributing 100,000 of them. We'll have more information on ncaa.com/Final4 next week, but we are working with a lot of partners who are statewide. So our friends in Fort Wayne and Evansville will be distributing them. The American Red Cross is actually distributing them for us throughout the entire state. Gleaners is going to be taking them out as they deliver food. We'll have a couple of locations downtown where you can just go and pick them up, like City Market. They'll be on Indigo buses. So really trying to get out to as many people in need as possible, but also then going to try to get it to the masses. We're pretty much engaged with every school in the state, which is great, including D1, D2, and D3 schools, and getting them these, but it'll be 100,000. We may order more. We're going to see how this campaign takes off, but again, I think it's going to be really great to see people wearing these and also wearing their own mask and really spreading the word of why they mask up. And again, just making sure that people know that, like, in order to execute events like this, we gotta be safe and we have to mask up.
Shh, don't tell anybody. Tomorrow's the official launch. Okay. I just knew about it and I had to ask the question. So we've talked about all this stuff going on, and I'm surprised that my attendees here are not dropping more questions. I'm wanting more questions. So let's think of some things and drop them in here. Help us out a little bit. Help Kyle out with his moderating session. I know he's got questions of his own, but I'm going to ask one last question, Sarah. And you've been with Indiana Sports Corp for 2 years now. And where do you see, you ended up being in a role that, yes, you like sports, but it wasn't necessarily what you really were targeting. Mm-hmm. But now, do you see that as being, obviously Indiana Sports Corp is where you want to be, mm-hmm. but do you see this as being the type of position that you want to be in for the rest of your career?
That's a good question. I don't know. I really, a big part of my job that I've really loved is making connections and being able to see people with common goals come together and collaborate and work together. So I feel like I could see myself in a kind of position that does that kind of connection, that still serves the community in some way. I don't know if that will be through sports forever, but I do think that it will be through working with community organizations. I even feel like maybe at some point I'll be doing some kind of consulting or leadership consulting. I don't know. It's very open for me, but I think I've learned that you don't have to know. You just have to pay attention to what's calling to you and what's giving you energy and what's not. And I'm very lucky in the fact that whenever I've left a job, I knew in my gut that, like, it was time for me to move on and find a new challenge. And luckily I had developed relationships with people that when I was confident enough to tell them, hey, I'm looking, hey, I'm open, things started coming up. I mean, I wouldn't have even heard about the Sports Corp opportunity if I hadn't opened up to my friend and said, hey, I think I'm ready for a change and just trying to see what's out there. And I don't think I would have thought of Sports Corp until she said something. So I think it's like, I always have that advice for students too, and even recent graduates, like, you do not need to know exactly what you want to do all of the time. And it's good when you keep your eyes open and your mind open to it, because there's a lot of opportunities out there that you wouldn't think maybe that you're either experienced for or would suit what you want to do, but you'd be surprised as you start to find what interests you and you start to connect with certain people, like opportunities will come out that you never even thought were possible. So I think if I'm serving my community in some way, I'll be on a good route.
Well, I'm telling you, you've got me now saying, how do I do it? Right. I'm not gonna argue that.
You're doing it.
All right. So I'm going to hand it off to Kyle because I know he's got
Right.
a couple of questions. We've had a question dropped in the chat. We've had a question dropped in the Q&A, and I know Kyle's got a couple of them that are burning through his brain. So I'm going to hand it off to him for a minute, and then you're going to come back to me and for one last dish.
All right. Kyle.
Perfect. Here we go. All right. So what are the differences between marketing for a community organization like Indiana Sports Corp and a professional like sports team?
Ooh, that's a really good question. So specifically, I'm going to tell you first specifically with Sports Corp. So with Sports Corp, since we only work on events that we've bid on and won and we bring to our city, marketing for them is a little bit different. So obviously, I'm going to take the Big Ten football championship game as an example in a typical year. So they obviously are promoting that game to all of their schools. But what my job is I promote to the Central Indiana community. So when we win that event, we are offering them our marketing services as far as engaging the Central Indiana community. They handle all the marketing of their constituents within the Big Ten schools. So it's really our job as Indiana Sports Corp to give the event the best advice and insight on how you market to our community. So that makes it a little bit different because with a professional sports team, if you're on a marketing team there, you're only like focused on that community. I would say too, like nonprofit versus like pro sports team. Depending on the pro sports team, there's a little bit more freedom. I know with pro sports, you just have a lot of sponsors to consider and a lot of approvals that need to get done because you're not just the Pacers, you're working with the NBA, you're not just the Colts, you're working for the NFL. Whereas nonprofit, you don't need as many approvals to get to promote and to collaborate. But I will say a lot of people are kind of confused, like, so what do you do with like events and marketing through Sports Corp? And it's really when we win an event and we host it, they trust us as far as marketing, PR, advertising to the Central Indiana community.
My next question is from my brain.
Okay.
So obviously you have, the 68 or 66 games of March Madness before Final Four. How are you guys going about planning for the Final Four mixed in with planning for the other 66 games or 65 games to happen?
So from a game ops perspective, I think what they've really done is just kind of expand what that looks like. So that's the Final Four is kind of moved into that as well. So it's a bigger plan utilizing a lot of the same people. From my perspective, there are those events, those signature events that always surround the Final Four. So there's Music Fest, there's Reese's Final Four Friday, there's the Fan Fest that typically happens at the Convention Center all weekend, and there's the Dribble, which happens on that Sunday. So specifically, my focus is as soon as we hear about those events and what the capacities look like, if they're doing them in person or virtually, my focus needs to be back on that. So that's why I'm doing a lot of work right now on the community initiatives around March Madness, because as soon as I get that word from the NCAA as to what those signature Final Four events look like, that is where a lot of my focus is going to shift, because I think that's the thing, that is one thing that the NCAA has really tried to make clear to us is, yes, you have the whole tournament, but we still need to remember that the Final Four is the big kahuna in all this, and we have to make sure that we still execute very well on the Final Four. So yeah, so that's where a lot of my priorities are going to shift, is as soon as we hear about what those events look like, that's where it's going to change. Game ops wise, I think they're just expanding that team and trying to figure out how they can make everything work with a lot of the people we utilize for just the Final Four games too.
So do you see those events that you're working on for primarily the Final Four expanding through the whole tournament if they, agree to have them in some kind of capacity? Or
that's a really good question, because I do think if they go virtual with some of this stuff, they could. Like if Music Fest went virtual and they have the connections to the talent, they could make it a week-long Music Fest instead of just 3 days. Or if they take Fan Fest virtual and they want to do at-home fan activations, they could definitely take that longer virtually. So yeah, that is a really good question, Kyle, because I've been thinking about that. Like, what if they do expand those? And I guess, I definitely prefer in-person events, but that is the nice thing about virtual is you have a little bit more of that leeway because it's all online. So we'll see what they end up deciding to do. I do know the dribble, which they usually do, it would be throughout downtown. They are talking about like, how do we take that statewide? So we should know more information on that to share soon.
Then we had a student ask about the Mask Madness. Let me get the question here. He's like, how do people go about obtaining those masks to help spread the word?
Yeah, so we're going to have on the website, there will be a list of places where you can pick them up, but IUPUI is participating. So they are getting a delivery of 1,000 masks on Friday, and then we're probably going to keep shipping masks over as we get more shipped to us. So there will be certain places where you can pick them up, but then pay attention to what your school is doing, because I know IUPUI is getting 1,000 on Friday. I don't know how they plan to get them out, but I'm sure they're going to come up with something. We've really kind of armed the universities with masks and told them, do what you think is best on getting these out. And then we're going to have a few community locations where people can just pick them up.
It's going to be the hot commodity around
town. It is.
So my last question before I hand you back over to Dr. Sherman. So what does a student need to possess to succeed in this industry? Or I should say last in this industry.
A student should possess, I would say, hard work, showing up. I just feel like it says so much to us when we see students consistently show up. And that's what's caught my eye a lot is the people, you, Kyle, Wally, great example. The people who show up and say, how can I help? I can't even express that enough. And follow through. You can say, how can you help? But if you don't follow through, then it's not much of a help. So, but I think students should just really keep carrying on the mindset of learning. Like always figure out what can I learn from this? Because none of us know how to do it all. And I think all of us are learning, but you're only going to move forward if you admit and acknowledge that you don't know everything and you are willing to learn more. I think honestly, that was a hard lesson for me. I hate not knowing how to do everything. But when I acknowledge that and I surround myself with a lot of people who do know what they're doing, it makes everyone that much more successful. So I would say keep an open mindset, hard work ethic, and show up.
Wow, that right there is a hard hitter in and of itself. the level of advice there. So, okay, I always like to end the episode with giving you the floor. No questions, nothing pointed. It's up to you to say whatever you want to say, whatever's on your mind. I call it the parting shot. Okay, so it's the parting shot from Sarah Myer. The floor is yours. Tell us anything that crosses your mind that you think we need to know.
What I think you need to know is this is a once in a lifetime opportunity that Indianapolis is about to get. Once in a lifetime, because let's be honest, none of us want this to happen again. We do not want to be in a pandemic again where we have to do this, but this is a massive opportunity. Figure out how you can get involved in it and figure out how you can be a part of it, because this is not going to happen again. And I am telling you, in 5 years, if you are applying for a job and someone sees that you did something to help advance our city during a pandemic. And I'm not just talking about March Madness. Figure out how you can get involved, because this is going to be a work in progress. We are going to need help much more past March Madness, but figure out how you can give back to your city. Don't let this pandemic pass. And when you're asked, what did you do to improve yourself or better yourself during the pandemic, have an answer to say, have a really good answer to say. So this is a hard time. This is a challenging time, but this is a huge opportunity. So keep positive. I'm going to actually quote Ryan. He keeps telling us it's the 3 Ps: positive, productive, progressive. And that has been in my head a lot, because it is hard to stay positive in these times. It really is. But I am telling you, since he said that, it has helped my attitude so much. And so I just keep positive, keep thinking, what can I do to better myself every single day? Perspective matters, attitude matters, and show up.
I can't say enough about this one. Thank you, Sarah, for coming on. I really can't, because the positivity and the energy that flows from you, I can't thank you enough for, the relationship that we have. And I really, really enjoy it. And I can't wait to be working with you here come March. So
absolutely.
Thank you again, Sarah, for coming on. I know you got to head over to a meeting, so I'm sure you've had meetings all day. So I figure I'd give you a couple of minutes to at least maybe shove something, food wise down the old gullet, or maybe take a drink or something. But thank you again for coming on. And
thank you.
I want to plug our next appearance. It's going to be Charlie Frank. Charlie Frank's the executive director of the Reds Community Fund out in Cincinnati. He's going to be on the speaker series on Wednesday, January 27th at 5:00. If something else happens and we get another one scheduled in between there, which has happened before, if we do, then we will let you know. So thank you for attending today. Thank you again to Sarah, and we'll see you at the next one.